Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem, and here is the news. 625 days less the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russian forces lost about 10,000 military, 7 Su-25 aircraft, and a lot of other equipment in just a month in their efforts to capture the city of Avdiivka in the Donetsk region, reports RBK Ukraine. According to Valery Zaluzhny, commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, this was a month of fierce battles, stamina and courage of Ukraine's warriors who continue heroically holding the defense. He specified that in that month Ukrainian troops destroyed over 100 Russian tanks, 250 other armored vehicles and about 100 artillery systems. Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal said that to cover the budget deficit for next year, the government expects to receive more than $30 billion from international partners, reports Ekonomichna Pravda. According to the Prime Minister, Kyiv expects to receive 5.4 billion from the IMF, 18 billion euros of financial aid from the EU, and more than 10 billion from the US, as well as additional budget support from Japan, the UK, Norway, Belgium, Sweden, Portugal, and other countries. We would really appreciate if you could rate us, ideally with 5 stars, and leave a glowing review in the app where you are listening to this podcast, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or others. This way more people would learn about the podcast and truth about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Canadian government has asked the parliament to allocate $385 million for military aid to Ukraine, reports Ukrinform. According to the request, funds will be used to provide equipment and services to Ukraine that defends its sovereignty, including firearms, drone cameras, pilot training, and tank maintenance. A court sentenced to 15 years imprisonment a Russian agent who guided a Russian military column from Sumy Oblast in northeastern Ukraine to the outskirts of Kyiv in central Ukraine on his personal vehicle in the early days of Russia's full-scale invasion, reports Ukrainska Pravda. Being a local resident and therefore well aware of all possible roads leading around the main ones, the man arranged all the prerequisites for the successful advance of Russian vehicles into Kyiv Oblast. This included tanks, armored personnel carriers, and self-propelled artillery systems. Ukrainian defenders destroyed the convoy of Russian forces in the course of the war. However, the Russian asset came back to Sumy Oblast after escorting the occupying forces, continuing to work for Russia's security services even after the oblast was liberated. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We are a commercial initiative of just 2 people and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.